All right. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're located. First, as we kick off this webinar today, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for joining the call. I know it's busy in the construction season and you have a lot of concrete to get out the gates. So we really appreciate you joining the call today to join us in this webinar related to the AI features embedded into C60. Before we get into today's presentation and a live demo of the C60 AI features, I want to do a quick round of introductions of our C60 team here. So with me, I have Carlos Benefato. He is our Chief Technical Officer at C60. We also have
Hello.
Janine Dugan. She's our Vice President of Customer Success. And we have Chris Herbert, who is our Customer Success Engineer, and Mark McCash, who is our Marketing Director. And myself, I'm Nathan Eckel, and I'm our Customer Success Manager, and I will be leading the conversation today. So a little bit of housekeeping before I get into the presentation. If there are any questions today, you'll notice at the top of the Teams chat here, the webinar, there's a Q&A button. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. Our team will address those questions as they come in. And if we can't address them immediately, we'll wait till the end of the call where we have a designated question and answer period. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get into a short presentation, and then we're going to get into some live demonstrations. So today's session and webinar is all about going beyond reporting and using AI built for the ready-mix industry. So before I get into the AI topic, I'll first want to highlight a little bit and provide an overview of what C60 is for those that may not be familiar with the C60 product. So C60 is the leading margin optimization platform in the ready-mix industry. And what we do is we connect all the different operating systems in the ready-mix industry that includes your batching, dispatching, quality control, invoicing, and so on to turn your operational data into margin improvement opportunities. And we do this by analyzing your entire value chain, and I'll elaborate a little bit further on that on our next slide. And what we have today is we have over 20 plus different connectors to all the different operating systems as it relates to operational performance and also payroll and some additional data streams that are maybe not as common in certain applications. We also analyze over 40 million cubic yards of concrete daily. And for the average producer, we've been able to identify around $7 a cubic yard in leakage opportunities. And that again will relate to either batching, dispatching, sales, so that entire value stream. And then at the end of the day, what we're left with is one application or one platform that connects to all your operating systems, all your operational data streams to give you the ability to monitor your plants, your orders, your customers, your tickets, and your invoices all in one centralized location. A little bit more on some of those value chains. We really look at 4 key values, and those are going to be pricing and quoting. So the C60 application really monitors a lot of historical customer delivery performance data to allow producers to both build estimates really quickly based on actual delivery cost data and as well as material cost data that's up to date, and then also turn that into a quote. And then we also look at, again, customers and service data. So understanding the customers that are costing you more to service, how well each of the projects are going from a service standpoint as it relates to on-site time and gaps and overlaps. We also look at delivery and fleet performance to make sure that each truck is pulling their weight in terms of how many loads they're getting per day, what their cycle times are, and et cetera. And then lastly, we look at production of materials, all around batching accuracies, batching efficiencies, your mix designs to make sure that there's not any leakage related to anything material related. And then C60 differs in the sense that we always pull to the top in our application the highest ranked dollar amount opportunities. So you spend less time sifting through data to really analyze where the biggest levers are in your operation that are costing you the most from a pure dollar standpoint. So now on to the main topic of today's webinar. We're going to get into the C60 AI agents and some additional AI features that we've embedded into our product. And it's all around stopping reporting and start operating using that operational data. So our C60 AI agents are the leading RMC AI agents in the industry, and it's backed by some rigorous benchmarking. And we've tested that over 190 different ready-mix KPIs, asking real business questions with real customer data to make sure that our system is flushed out and giving you insights that allow you to turn that operational data into actionable actions. More specifically, our C60 AI agents, they give you that visibility on demand and in real time so that you can have that conversations with your data to understand which customers or projects are becoming unprofitable or less profitable, understanding where there may be some issues that are impacting costs. So again, whether that's related to materials or fleet efficiency, and really ultimately understanding where are we losing margin today? Is it revenue based? Is it cost based? And again, what kind of levers are at our disposal to capture some of that operational inefficiency? And we do this right now with 3 different AI features. One of those features is actually being able to converse with your data on the go or in the field. So we've embedded C60's AI model into your mobile devices to allow you to converse with your data without needing to be connected to the internet or pulling up a laptop and connecting to your office so that you have that kind of flexibility. So you now can be on the job site or be on the road and have the ability to text your AI agents, asking data or asking questions about your operational data on the go in real time. And we're going to go through a live demo of some of these features later on in the webinar today. Now, on top of just being able to converse with your data to ask those operational questions, we've embedded these AI agents that'll actually monitor your business. That adds another layer of intelligence so that you're not always managing and sifting through and combing through data and reports. You're going to have an AI agent that's always working with you and your business and your data to identify when there's inefficiencies happening. And it's really about managing by exception. So if you want to be notified when a certain customer or project, the on-site time or the profitability is dropping below a certain benchmark, you can have those alerts being sent to you so that you spend less time, again, going through reports and data and more time acting on what's actually happening in the field in near real time. Now, that's it for this short presentation. I think a lot of the webinar today, we really want to focus on actually using the C60 application and those 3 different features that we talked about. So those are going to be the Ask C60, the Ask C60 for your mobile device, and going through setting up my agents to monitor the business in real time. So with that, I'll pass it over to Carlos, and Carlos is going to give us a brief demonstration on exactly what C60's AI model can do and how it works and functions.
All right, thanks for that, Nathan. Good stuff. So as Nathan mentioned, I'll be showing you some of the basics around Ask C60, how it works, and some of the features. And then Nathan will come back on and show you how to really take advantage of those features and ask some powerful questions as an RMC producer in different roles. And you'll see Chris a little bit later as he demos how to create the AI agents. So just give me 1 second while I switch my screen, switch to my screen. So just here we go. And I'll just ask for confirmation from Nathan and Chris or Janine if you guys see my screen correctly. Everything's okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're good to go.
All right. So for those who haven't seen C60 before, this is what we call C60 Business, and embedded within C60 Business, we have C60 AI agents, specifically Ask C60, My Agents, and some other AI capabilities. We're not going to go into C60 in too much detail. We're going to jump right into Ask C60, which is embedded within the C60 platform. And so as a user, when I log on to C60, this is my home screen. And what I see right off the bat is how much margin I have potential leakage of over the next 12 months and where that leakage is and how much that leakage will be worth if we don't change certain aspects of how we're operating our business. So as a C60 user, in this fictitious company, and just, as a side note, this is all demo data. This is not real data. So some of it might make sense. Some of it might be a little wonky, just because it's auto-generated data that we use for our demos. So with that, as a C60 user, I'm starting my day. I'm going to jump into Ask C60, and I'll do that just by clicking the Ask C60 button here in the navigation. And the first thing that Ask C60 does is it gives me a recap of my day yesterday as a business, some key aspects, some key performance indicators. And it also gives me some things to look out for today based on yesterday's performance, based on today's orders, and based on the historical view of the past 30 days. And it's going to call out certain things that I can look for to keep an eye on for my day. It could be in logistics, it could be in production, it could be in delivery. But it'll use the data that I have and the transactions that I've had and the orders that I have coming up to give me some things to look out for. So once I've looked at my daily recap, I'll go ahead and jump into my question. And what I want to do is I want to check in on a new customer that we have, and see how it's going. This is a very important customer to us, and they're just getting started, and we want to make sure things are off to the right start. So I'm going to jump into C60, and I'm going to ask C60, what's the on-site time for each of the last 5 deliveries for this customer? And I copy pasted that just to save some time, but you would typically just type that question in your own words. And what C60 is going to do now is it's actually going to look at your data. Everything is grounded in your data. There's no response that doesn't use your data. And these types of questions can be questions about the past. They can be questions about things that are going on right now. They can be predictive questions about things that are happening in the future. And so when Ask C60 responds, it's going to basically give you 5 or 6 components to a response. And this is where we really think Ask C60 differentiate itself from other solutions on the market. First, it's been trained on RMC. It knows the language, it knows the domain, it's specific to RMC. And we tested it across, as Nathan was mentioning, those 190 KPIs on a regular basis to make sure it understands the question, where the data, how to go get the data, where to pull the data from in the database, and make sure that it's responding correctly. And so once I ask that question, the first part that it's going to return to me or provide is the natural language response. And this is basically the AI answering my question in its own words. And it's going to tell me about the last 5 deliveries for Barbara Ventures, which is the customer I wanted to check in on. And it's going to give me a little range. And it's going to tell me, it's 47 to 76 minutes per delivery. So there's quite a big range in there. So, to my surprise, I'm going to want to look into that a little bit further. One thing that Ask C60 does, as you can imagine, the question that I asked was, what was the on-site time for the last 5 deliveries for Barbara Ventures? Well, I didn't say my customer, Barbara Ventures. I didn't say from the plant, Barbara Ventures, or, so the AI had to actually infer what I was talking about. And so what we do as part of the response is the AI will always tell you what it treated that name as. So in this case, I didn't say customer, but it understood the question, and I was asking about a customer, and it told me that's what it understood. The next thing that it's going to do is it's going to give me the breakdown of the data. So what data did it use to come up with this answer? And it's going to give me all the fields that it used, and I'll be able to look through this as a table. I can sort through the individual fields, and I can really start to understand the data behind the answers to the question. And this is one area that we've put a lot of effort into our AI, is the explainability, the transparency, and really understanding how did it come to that answer. Because there are a lot of questions, and some of them are very tricky and complex, and it's really important to understand how it came to that answer. So this is one way we do it, but also it gives our users the ability to see the data that the AI used to generate the response. Once I've looked at the data through the table, if I continue scrolling down, what I'm going to see here is a graph that was generated by the AI that helps me visualize the results. And this is determined and identified by the AI. So when I ask my question, it's actually going to determine if a graph would help me in understanding the response, and if so, what type of graph it would be. So you could choose a pie chart, a bar chart, a line chart, whatever the AI determined was the best representation for the data to answer that question. So it allows me to look at it in a graphical view. And then this is where it really starts to differentiate itself from other tools on the market and generic stuff like ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic. Whenever you ask a question with Ask C60, because we are hyper focused on margin optimization and the obsession with our product is all around margin optimization, every question that you ask, the AI will always look for a margin leakage opportunity related to the question or the answer and surface that to you so that you don't just get your answer to your question, but it also gives you a lead in terms of acting on a potential margin opportunity. And what we call that at C60 is vibe optimizing. And you might have heard a lot about vibe coding, vibe engineering. And basically, this is the AI leading you down a path that maybe you weren't looking for, that you didn't directly ask for, but it's going to surface it to you out of interest in terms of margin reduction. So in this question that I originally asked, it actually identified a vibe opportunity for me, and it gives me the potential upside, which in this case is about 4,700 USD. It explains the opportunity to me, why I should care about it or why it matters. It gives it a score out of 100 with a ranking. So from the AI's perspective, this is something we can look at, but it's not necessarily the highest priority. So it gives us a ranking. Now we can decide that this is a high priority for us. We don't have to follow the AI's recommendation, but it does rank and kind of give you an urgency around every opportunity that it identifies. So now that I've seen this opportunity, I might want to dig into it a little bit further and see what I can actually do about it. And so one of the things that we can do, or that the AI does in its response, it's actually going to generate 3 additional questions, what we call the vibe questions, that were related to the opportunity that help me dig deeper into that margin opportunity so that I can really take action on it, or at least start to monitor it to see if I need to take action on it. And that's the vibe questions. And I'll show you an example of that shortly. But before we move on to the vibe question, with every question and response, you're going to get a set of buttons or commands down here. And these are, some of them are very typical. You can leave feedback and say this was a good response or this was a bad response. We use this to train and improve the model when the feedback is given. But the other aspect that's really important, and these are really differentiators in what C60 does, is I can get an explanation of how the AI came to that answer. So before I saw the data, but what was the actual thinking process to get to that answer? And so if I click on this little button here, which is our explainability button, the AI is actually going to explain to me in English terms, or normal terms, how it came to this answer, and it's going to lead me through it step by step. So at any point as a user, I can always find out how the AI came to an answer, what rules it used to execute that answer, which tables, which fields, and how it came to the answer. So as we see here, the AI responded, and it walks me through the steps of how it came to that answer. So first thing is it identified the customer. Second thing, it found the deliveries related to the customer. Then it selected all relevant deliveries. And then there was some rule interpretations here, and then some business rules that were applied and how they were and how it applied them. So I can get deeper insight into how the AI came up with this answer. And for those that are a little bit more technical, there's another way to look at this, is if I click on this button here, it's actually going to show me the query or the code that was executed to come up with this answer. So I can see exactly which tables, the formulas that were used, the fields that were used, and which queries were used to get this data. So whenever there's a question and an answer, and if there's any doubt around that question, you can get a full explanation and transparency from the AI, from Ask C60, to understand how it got to that result. The other thing that you can do with any response is you can export the results. So I can export this to Excel, download it and open it. And then I'm going to have access to that same table that I saw up here. I now have access to it in Excel. I'm not sure if you guys can actually see that because I'm only sharing my browser window, but the Excel is downloaded to my PC, and then you can open it and use that for whatever reporting or calculations or interim analytics that you would need from the data. The other thing that Ask C60 does that's very different, and you'd think that with an interface like this where you're just asking questions, it could be pretty simple, although asking the right question to the AI sometimes is a little bit harder than just writing out a sentence, in the sense that you need to know when to use a customer versus a plant, or if you have uh, the word New York in your question 3 times, for example, what were the sales out of New York? And how many deliveries did we do out of New York? And if you have a plant named New York and the city named New York, well, coming up with the right question to get that answer sometimes could be a little bit tricky for the AI, and it could be a little bit tricky for the user if there's a very complex question that's being asked. So what we've done to help with that and really bring an assistance to using the product is with every question and every answer, if you look at this little green dot, this green dot can be either green, yellow, or red. And if you asked a poor structured question or a question where you could have refined it to get a better result, the AI actually assesses every question that you ask and then provides you coaching on if it was a good question or how you could have improved it to get better and more precise results. And in this case, it seems to be a good question. It doesn't need any recommendation, but it does give you examples, and then it gives you a reason or why or how you should have improved your question. And this has been really helpful for our users in getting more out of Ask C60 and getting more accurate responses. Now, as I look into this Barber Ventures, my customer, I might want to drill down. So I can click on one of those vibe questions, coming back to that, and see, and I'll go with the third one here, and it says, where should we focus to capture our largest share of that 4,700? So, where should we look? I'm going to click that and just ask C60 to answer that question. So C60 is going to go off. It's going to look at, the data. It's going to look at infer some insights, and it's going to come back with a response in terms of where I should look to really capture that $4,700 upside. So we'll just give the Ask C60 a second to do that. Some questions can take, a few seconds. Some questions take a little bit longer, depending on the complexity of the question and how much diagnostic analysis has to go on. Because this is happening in real time, it does take a few seconds sometimes, but we'll let that just process and come back. So I clicked on that third question, and now it's actually giving me the diagnosis of where I should focus on. And it's telling me to focus on 2 job site locations with this customer, West Bank and Robert Street in New Jersey. And these 2 are really making up the bulk of it. So now I can dig into those job sites and really see what's going on and what's causing that in terms of that margin leakage and how I can optimize that further. But now that I have this new customer, and I saw that, the last 5 deliveries, the on-site time hasn't been very good. As an organization, we're averaging about 55 minutes, and I see some here at 76, 64, 71. And I want to keep an eye on this customer going forward and their on-site time, because it's a new customer. I want to make sure it's going on the getting off to the right track. So what we can do with Ask C60, and Chris is going to go into this in more detail, but from any response, I can click on this little agent button here, and it's going to create an agent that's going to answer that question for me or look at that question for me on a daily basis and then monitor that for me and notify me if the on-site time is above a certain threshold that I want to monitor at. And if it is, it'll send me an email and it'll notify me and it can notify other people on the team. But I can go from asking a question that I didn't really think there was an opportunity on, to discovering an opportunity, to monitoring that opportunity with an AI agent, and then to diving into that opportunity further with the vibe optimization. And then you can replay that and continue down that loop, as deep and as far and as long as you want to go. So that's kind of the core concepts around Ask C60, some of the more differentiated components and how we kind of differentiate this from just a typical ChatGPT, Claude, or some other vendors on the market. And we really try to focus every question, every interaction with a margin leakage optimization opportunity and helping you recoup that leakage. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. That was really well done. So what I'm going to do next is really building off of the demonstration that Carlos provided, and it's really going to focus on, again, on the delivery side of it. Going back into the ASCII-60, I wanted to go through a scenario that, maybe if I'm an operations manager or if I'm in sales or dispatch, and I want to look at, how we're trending year to date on some key metrics relative to last year, just to kind of start the conversation. And while I explain that, I'm going to copy and paste my prompt into the chat box here just to save some time. And while the ASCII-60 is answering that question, the real goal here is I wanted to start broad. My prompt is really just summarizing the top 10 delivery performance metrics year to date compared to the same period last year. You'll notice I didn't give it an entity, so I didn't ask it to explain it or compare it by customer or by plant or by region. I gave it really a broad prompt, understanding and given the AI the flexibility to come up with what 10 delivery performance metrics are important to the AI. And then from there, I'm going to dive deeper into seeing how I can filter that question to fine tune it to start getting down to an answer that really makes it more actionable. So as you can see, the prompt that I gave it was top 10 delivery performance year to date versus last year. To summarize some of the content that it came up with, and maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger so that everybody can read it. Is year to date, it's showing a mix of positive growth in some areas and a slight decline in other metrics as well. Most notably, the improvements are around delivered volume, which has seen an increase of over 15,000 cubic meters. We can see that's a growth of 40% year over year. You can also see that also leads to a delivery count growth. So those are two metrics that came up that I thought might be important. On the efficiency side, so in the next paragraph, it's looking like load size is dipping. So it dropped by 1.6%, moving to 5.8 cubic meters. And again, this is also available in imperial units as well. Some other metrics, such as logistics cycle time, on-site time, and travel time, those all increased slightly. So that's showing a little bit of an inefficiency from a serviceability and cycle time standpoint. And it's showing they've all improved or increased. I shouldn't say improved. Increasing cycle time is not necessarily a great thing. So it looks like it's increased by somewhere between 2 and 3%. So it's given me a summary now of some of the different KPIs and metrics that I thought were important and how they compare year to date versus the same period last year. And again, in the table with the data that is provided and how it calculated those metrics, you now have ability to see how that looks from the different metrics that are provided. What I want to do with this question now is I can look at the vibe opportunities and vibe questions and go the route that Carlos had mentioned, as I can continue to ask questions that the AI is coming up with. But if I want to maybe be a little bit more targeted in my questions, I might use these vibe questions as purely a guide to help prompt and come up with some ideas on what I can ask next. And before I do that, you can also see that this question, the structure was acceptable. The reason for it being acceptable and not green and great is looks like it lacks specific the delivery performance metrics that we were after. So I didn't give it an entity, I didn't give it metrics to track specifically. I did give it a time frame, but I didn't add some additional metrics and information that might make that prompt a little bit more geared towards understanding the question itself. So I'm going to follow up with understanding on my next prompt here. I want to maybe dive a little bit deeper into giving it an entity, giving it a more specific date range, and also giving it some key metrics that I want to start tracking. So my next prompt is all about which plant should I prioritize to reduce cycle times, capture some of that delivery cost savings from a truck utilization and a delivery efficiency perspective. I've given it a date range. I wanted the first 6 months of 2026. And I want to see the records shown by plant, by the group or what plant group or hierarchy that those belong to, as well as some key KPIs like cycle times, loading time, travel time, and so on. So I've given it now specific metrics I want to track. I've given it a date range, and then I gave it an entity by plant so that I could start comparing my plants against one another to see where there may be inefficiencies and where there's some opportunities for margin improvement. So in our demo environment, we have 3 plants. We have a Dover plant, a Springfield, and a Washington plant. 2 of these plants, Dover and Washington, are part of our West plant group. So it's now breaking it down, each row representing the plant. And as I scroll to the right here, you can see where the AI comes up with some delivery cost savings opportunities. It expresses that in a dollar amount. We could see how those metrics that I defined. So I wanted cycle times, I wanted loading times, travel times, and so on. So now I have an ability to compare those plants against one another to start seeing where should I maybe focus my attention on next. And from this question, I might want to dive a little bit deeper into not just understanding the plants, but I maybe want to know which customers at each of those plants are driving some of those inefficiencies. So with that, I'll copy my next prompt over. And my next plant is asking again for the same date range. I want to know which customers are contributing to the excess delivery costs of each plant. And my goal with this question is, now that I know which plants may have inefficiencies as it relates to the delivery and cycle time aspect, I might want to know which customers at each of those locations should I maybe focus on. And then from there, we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper into that to actually look at individual customers and their projects to see, is it a specific project that is hindering that customer's performance and also contributing to that plant inefficiency or those delivery metrics? So as I let me copy that question. I don't think that. There we go. So it'll take, again, anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple minutes, depending on how much data the application needs to read or the AI needs to read and decipher in its answering period here. So it's coming up with a vibe opportunity. So it's coming up with, let's see, there, it's done reading now. So what I came up with an answer to that question, it shows that some of the customers at each of the locations are Andrew and Sons is one example, Michelle Worldwide. So now it's giving me the same exact metrics that I defined to look at it on a per plant basis. It's now giving me the combination of those plants and those customers. So as I scroll down to the table view, just to look at the data itself, and if I scroll through this table, you can see it's giving me 10 customers at each location. So this is the Dover plant. These are the 10 customers ranked by where there's inefficiencies, always expressed by that dollar amount. So again, we always try to bring not only inefficient customers, but which customers have a lot of volume and a lot of inefficiency, and what's that worth to the business from a peer dollar amount. So it came with Andrew and Sons was the worst customer in terms of excess delivery costs for the Dover plant. As I scroll down, Springfield, it looks like it's Mark Logistics. And then as I continue with that, at the Washington plant, it looks like Elizabeth Holding is the customer that's driving the most inefficiency there. So then the last question that I might come to ask the AI as I dig deeper into not just analyzing 30 different customers, if I want to focus my attention on one, I'll copy my next prompt, and it's all about honing in on one individual customer. And the question I'm asking is for the customer Daniel and Sons. So that's my entity. I wanted to summarize the delivery performance for the first 6 months. So there's my time frame. And then I gave it the key metrics that I want to look at. And with this, I'm hoping the output's now going to give me for that customer, what's that customer's average in terms of all those different key metrics. And then also show me for the different projects or job sites, where should I maybe focus my attention that's really geared to a specific action? Because now that we're not just looking at a customer that may have multiple projects, we're actually honing in on an individual combination of plant, customer, and project. And that'll hopefully make the actionable items a little bit easier to understand and act on. Let me give it a second to continue with the vibe opportunity.
As we said, this is a demo environment with demo data, so sometimes the data changes, which could lead to.
Yeah, it's coming up with an answer. It's just going to take a few minutes. So it comes up, and I don't know if Carlos had mentioned this earlier. So it answers each of the questions with 5 opportunities, 5 questions, as well as an overall summary and as well as some tables. It goes and answers those questions and produces those answers as they're ready. So to help speed up the time it takes to ask and answer some of those questions, it will spit out the answers as they are available, and the AI comes up with those solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and ask that same question again to see if I get I'll get the remaining component of the question for looking at Daniel and Sons to summarize delivery performance across some of those key metrics. The graph it's displaying here is all related to some of the projects. So this is the typical output we're looking to see here. So again, it's for the customer Daniel and Sons. Here's the average at the top of the table. This is that that customer's average across all those key metrics. So I could see their average cycle time for all projects, all deliveries is about 168 minutes. I could see the average travel time, wait time, some of those delivery phases that either the producer or the customer has a lot of control in improving, as well as some additional metrics like load size, volumes, how many deliveries or that percentage of deliveries that happens during the peak time. And then it'll even come up with some efficiency flags, or in certain cases, it'll come up with some actual recommendations. So if it comes and identifies projects that have a really long cycle time or a really long waiting time, some of those, the AI can provide some insights on what action items are geared to each specific project. So as we go through and hopefully lead this example, starting really broad at just understanding how we're trending over time for some key metrics without being too specific, leading us into a conversation around the plants. And then from there, understanding which customers, and then lastly, driving it down into the details to get it to a project level so that when we're looking at which customers are inefficient, where should we maybe focus our attention on a project by project basis, especially if there's still work continuing on those projects to make sure that we're using the data to make actionable decisions as we service our customers and aim to improve overall margin efficiency. So as you can see, a lot of information is shared in our insights. So we definitely recommend everybody take a chance, especially those that are using C60 today, to ask some of these questions and see who's inefficient from a customer or plant level across some of those key delivery metrics. And then the last thing I want to show before I hand it off to Chris is I talked a little bit about how we've embedded the C60 and the AI features into a mobile device. So I've actually asked C60, and I have a screenshot here of a conversation I have off my phone. So each user or customer in C60's application, you're going to have a dedicated number, an Ask C60 number, and that's the number you're going to be able to text the same types of questions that you might have as you're using the web application, using that now on your mobile device. So the scenario I came up with, and for anybody that's been in the dispatching chair and has had the customer call about maybe pumps sitting empty or maybe service inefficiencies or complaining about service, I asked the AI about a customer, Michelle or Michael Dynamics, on July 6th, 2026 is complaining about service. I wanted to know how many minutes of overlap and gap they had. An overlap meaning you had two or more trucks on the job site while one's pouring, you have another truck or two waiting to pour. And gap would be the amount of minutes that the pump or the job site did not have a ready mix truck on the job site. So I asked it that question. I got a reply back right away to tell me that I'm on it. So that's just our way of letting the users know that the AI has received the question and it's thinking. And then the output it gave us is this customer had over 770 minutes of overlap and only 8 minutes of gap. So in this demo data, that customer's calling us because they're complaining about the pump sitting empty for 8 minutes. While you now know that there was over 770 minutes of overlap. So you likely had a lot of trucks on the job site. And to get a little bit further into how we know that or what's actually happening from a delivery perspective, I also asked for what was the average unload time and waiting time to see if there was some inefficiencies there to help explain why there was an 8-minute gap. And what it came up with is the average unloading time was almost an hour, and the trucks were actually waiting for over 77 minutes. Now, in the real world application, we hope nobody's trucks are waiting over 70 minutes to unload, but hopefully that helps identify that, yes, this customer did have 8 minutes of gap, but because there was over 70 minutes of average wait to unload time, maybe you had to pull a truck or two off that pour to service your other customers, and that might be why that pump sat empty for 8 minutes. But that's, again, hopefully illustrating that you could take these types of questions and converse with your data on the go without needing to pull up your laptop and connect to the internet. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chris to go through our AI agents.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nathan. All right. So now I'm sharing my screen. Same instance, we're all working off the same environment. So if I pop open my Ask C60, I'm going to populate a question. This is one of two ways where you can kind of program an AI agent to give you reports on a daily basis. Like the others, I have mine ready, copy pasted to save some time. But this is going to give me a list of last week, any customers that exceeded 20 minutes before they started unloading. And this might be a report that you want to run on a weekly basis, daily basis. You can set either one of those up depending on the prompt. And once it formulates a response, you can kind of tweak that from there if you don't like how it's outputting anything. If you wanted additional columns or rows based on your data, you can have it there. So you populate all your data and you go down once the vibe opportunity is generated. As Carlos highlighted previously, there's a button that looks like a little tiny robot. And hopefully it'll show up. This is the robot face, and this is how you can set up an agent to either have this available on your front page whenever you come into C60, or have it email you or your team on different aspects of your business. So it's already validated because we asked through the C60 bot. We can give this a name like excessive on-site wait times. And then by default, you'll have it show on the homepage. But you can also say, hey, email me this. And then you can dictate your frequency. So mine's prompted as a weekly. So I want weekly on Tuesdays to give it a little bit time to run. And I want it in the afternoon because that's when I typically look at it. I'd like it in Excel. But I'd also like to add test user 1, maybe test user 3 in there because I think this is important for them to see. Good use case for this would be if you have your sales staff and your admin staff, so your accounts payable, accounts receivable people, you can set it up so that they get the same reports and skip a step, right? So everybody knows that if this customer is waiting and you want to add charges, it's already emailed. Everybody has that transparency. You can also put conditions in there. You can say only when concrete goes on a day, only when this number exceeds more than 5 customers. You can basically have it filter out the data for you. So if I click save and exit out, hopefully that's saved. Refresh my homepage here. Performance Analyzer. Yep. So now on my homepage under my agents, it will be there ready for me to look at if I want to hit more. But I can also add an action around this. I can modify the agent. So let's say I wanted to change the prompt to include another field. You can quickly update that in here, hit validate, and away you go. The other way of adding an agent is straight on your homepage here, where you hit the plus button and you populate your question in here. So we can do the same one, but maybe we'll add and add job site. We hit validate. So it'll take a minute to validate. It's running the same query as it did through the Ask C60 button. And then you can give it a title and save it as well. So there's lots of opportunities there. Since we have your data live, you can ask it questions about line items on your invoices missing. Let's say you want to make sure you charge winter heat in the wintertime. If you want to make sure that your fuel surcharges are getting charged out, you can set up agents to identify tickets from the day before to highlight that for your sales staff to drive those conversations. Again, you can have it performance-based. You can say we have a threshold of an unload speed of 6 yards a minute. And then if anybody exceeds that, let us know. There's lots of different opportunities there. One other thing I wanted to kind of go through fairly quickly as we are kind of coming up on time here is being able to, I'm going to start a new conversation. So this button up top, you can create new conversations so that the AI will remember your conversation history. So if you want to build off a question, it's always good to go back into the conversation you're having. But I want a fresh slate for this one. And this is going to be me building out a bunch of different key points I want to focus on for the AI, and then prompting it to give me a course of action that it seems to or would be deeming the best. So I'm going to have 3 prompts followed by a question of give me an action plan. So the first prompt I asked about volume and ASP trends. So give me the last 12 to 24 months broken down by region, customer segment, mix, and highlighting seasonality. So if you have winter heat or ice charges that you don't isolate out, this will populate that. I will say these ones do take quite a bit of time to populate because as a question itself, it's very vague, which you'll see when it comes down to the question coach. So it'll give you an overall diagnosis. Honestly, this information at this stage of the demo doesn't matter that much because it's really about that end output on the final question. But it does break down, like you can ask very vague questions, and every time I've asked this question, I get a different answer, but it always comes back to something that's driving those margin opportunities. And it's good that it does different answers, in my opinion. So it says, hey, you need precision. The question coach really doesn't like this one, but it doesn't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to ask my next question. We did have a couple questions in the chat while I'm talking or while it's thinking through these questions. So one of them was, how does it determine whether it's good, fair, or poor? I know, Nate, you touched on this a little bit. So with the Ask C60 question coach, it'll give that breakdown for you of saying, hey, you need to give us more specific metrics in terms of volume, or you need to give a time frame, or it didn't understand something along the front lines of a product that you mentioned, because it doesn't know, it might not know if it falls within a product group or if it's a concrete mix design or if it's a line item, like I was saying. So being able to identify those type of items and kind of refine your question around that will get you better results in the end. So again, it's going to pop out a response to my gross margin by segments. If anybody has segments in their data, which our demo data does, it's going to generate a vibe opportunity. And then I have one more question before I get to the final give me a game plan one. So another question was refining answers instead of starting a new one. This is kind of what I'm doing. So in this instance, it's getting a bunch of data points for the agent to remember in the conversation that we've talked about this, and then it'll use the previous conversations to kind of build off of that. I'm always a big fan, if I'm going in and asking a new question, I always like starting a new conversation personally, but you can run off the same conversation. It will remember your kind of tendencies and everything going forward. And then my last question's around plant efficiency and utilization, cycle times, and volume per man hour.
Yeah, and maybe just to elaborate on that question that I asked about refining answers. So, if you started a question and said, how many sales did we, or what was our average selling price by plant last month, and you get the answer, the next question could just be, and by customer, or what about by customer? And it's going to remember that you asked about average selling price, so you can always chain your questions and you don't have to retype stuff. The context is all kept in memory for the AI. And so you can ask subsequent questions with just fragments of a question and drill down deeper. So you don't need to start over every time.
All right, so we're almost to the finish line on my portion too, and then after this we'll open up for a little bit more Q&A. If anybody does have questions in the chat, be sure to post them there in the Q&A spot as we kind of wrap up this portion of it. So all my questions were poor questions according to the AI, but this is where I find, oh, and it exported for me. It's okay. This is where I find it very fun from my side to play around with AI and see if my expectations of what a business can change or isolate or focus on for the next little bit lines up with the AI, and it's been doing a really great job with that. And we'll see what kind of results it comes out with. I will say with the demo data, it does affect it a little bit, but for quick wins, it's focused on customers who've recently expanded volume and margin, such as Daniel and Son and Mary Industry. So the customers that you just started up with, see if you can drive opportunity there. Second quick win is promoting your high margin products, like the 3000 PSI and 4000 PSI, showing strong margin. Strengthen commercial execution across your sales force. Having delivered substantial volume to like Benjamin and Lucas while others have lagged. So basically focusing on the customers that you're getting the margin and the volume from. And then for strategic plays and then ongoing investment in plant capacity. So I've asked this probably 12 times in the last few days, and there's always some cool insights. Like one of them was being able to move your fleet from one plant to another within a certain area because one demand was higher than the other. But it does give you a very detailed action plan if you ask like this, and then you can build off of these questions as well. So it's a kind of a long form question to the AI agents. With that, I'll stop sharing and we can open it up to any Q&A from the group, or if anybody else has some closing remarks, if there are no questions.
I think one question from the original posted ones was about the vibe questions and how they're generated. Are they dynamic, or do you use any historical information?
Yeah, so maybe I can take a stab at that one. So they are dynamic. They're all based off of what question you originally asked. And what it does, the AI is actually going to benchmark your business to come up with those vibe opportunities and the questions associated to it. And it's always going to look at it from three different angles. And you kind of saw the pattern repeated in the vibe questions, but the questions themselves are dynamic, and it's always pushing you towards margin. So they are dynamic. They are based on historical patterns. And in terms of role, one thing that we've started to see a lot of C60 users do is they ask the question in their role. So for example, as a QC manager, or as a plant manager, or as a salesperson, what are the three things that I should be focusing on today? And if you add your role to it, it's actually the vibe opportunity and the vibe questions are gonna pick up on that, and they're gonna customize or create those questions based off of role as well. So that's maybe one takeaway for some of the folks that are existing customers on the call today, is try your questions with roles, and the AI will provide you very different responses based on your role or based on your area of expertise, and you can get different insights from it.
Now, there was another follow-up question there. How are AI agents governed? Can administrators control and create or edit who can have agents or access them or edit them?
Yes, so all agents, you can activate agents per user within your organization, but the agents also go a little bit further. So if you don't have access to certain plans, you won't be able to ask questions about those plans. So if in your setup you gave a user only access to 2 or 3 plants or a plant group within all of your plants, they'll only be able to ask questions about that, and the AI will pick up on that and respect that. The other thing is, if a certain user within your organization only has access to certain areas of opportunity or certain dashboards. So for example, if they only have access to the margin dashboards, but not the production or material dashboards, or areas of opportunity, they won't be able to ask questions about the materials and products. They'll only be able to ask questions about margin, and vice versa. And so it's really, the AI really respects and enforces the security and roles and profile of the user when they're asking the question, to make sure that any sensitive topics or topics that are reserved for certain areas or certain people within the organization, the AI respects that as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I think that's it for questions. If anybody does have any questions on any information or content that they've seen on the webinar today, I know just maybe a short summary of what we displayed. So we show the AI capabilities as it relates to conversing with your data through the chat box. So that's the Ask C60. We also demonstrated briefly how you can take that offline, take that into the field by using SMS. So you can use a mobile device to have those same types of conversations. And then lastly, Chris demonstrated how you can take those questions as you're using the Ask C60 or the mobile device and come up with some really good insights into your operation. And instead of asking those questions manually on a daily or weekly basis, you can actually have agents created to now ask those questions and answer those questions at whatever frequency you're looking for, so that you don't have to do it manually, as well as you're now able to capture things like inefficiencies as they happen and have alerts sent to you, so you don't have to maybe wait, or you don't lose the opportunity because too much time has passed by to take action on some of the insight areas that you're looking to manage and take care of. So with that, I think that closes our webinar today. If anybody has any questions, you can always reach out to success@c60.ai. We'll answer any questions related to the webinar today. Or if you're looking, and if you're a new user, or if you're new to C60, and if you want to learn more about the product, again, email success@c60.ai, and we'll be happy to set you up with a demo to show you what the product is all about and discuss a little bit further about some of the AI capabilities. So thanks again, everybody, for joining.
Everyone.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.